Imagine this. You carry a weight, an unseen burden that aches deep within your soul, yet you cannot name it. It is a pain that defies articulation, a silent scream resonating through the chambers of your heart, leaving you adrift in a sea of unspoken sorrow. This is the pain with no name, a concept that whispers through the profound depths of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, touching upon the hidden self that longs for recognition and integration. It is the gnawing sense of something lost, something missing, a void that no external achievement or relationship seems to fill. This elusive suffering often manifests as an inexplicable sadness, a pervasive feeling of emptiness, or a profound sense of isolation, even when surrounded by others. It is the echo of an unacknowledged wound, a shadow cast by the unlived life, waiting to be brought into the light. How many times have you felt this stirring, this intangible discomfort, and dismissed it, unable to pinpoint its origin or give it a voice? This unspoken agony often lurks in the unconscious, a repository of our deepest experiences, forgotten memories, and unfulfilled desires, exerting a powerful, unseen influence on our waking lives. Consider the tale of Alara, a woman who, from the outside, appeared to possess an enviable life. She had a successful career as an architect, a beautiful home, and a network of friends who admired her strength and wit. Yet, beneath the veneer of her polished existence, a profound disquiet resided. It wasn't the kind of pain that came from a specific loss or betrayal. It was something far more insidious, a constant hum of dissatisfaction that permeated her every waking moment. Alara often found herself staring blankly at her carefully curated life, a strange sense of detachment settling over her. She would attend social gatherings, engaging in lively conversations, only to return home feeling more alone than before, a stark emptiness echoing in the quiet corners of her mind. This wasn't depression in its clinical sense, at least not according to the initial diagnoses. It was a nebulous ache, a sense of not-enoughness that clung to her like a phantom limb. She tried everything to fill the void, pursuing new hobbies, traveling to exotic locales, even diving deeper into her demanding work, hoping that sheer accomplishment would somehow quell the restless spirit within. But each pursuit, while offering temporary distraction, ultimately failed to address the core of her suffering. The pain with no name remained, a silent companion in her meticulously constructed world. One evening, after a particularly draining day, Alara found herself drawn to an old, forgotten box in her attic. It was filled with mementos from her childhood, items she hadn't seen in decades. As she sifted through faded photographs and dusty trinkets, she stumbled upon a small, crudely drawn picture. It was a depiction of a young girl, no older than 5, standing alone in a vast, empty field, looking up at a sky filled with dark, swirling clouds. The girl's face was a mixture of fear and profound loneliness. Alara recognized the girl as herself, a memory she had long suppressed. It was the memory of her early childhood, marked by the emotional unavailability of her parents, who, though providing for her material needs, were often consumed by their own professional ambitions and anxieties. The young Alara had learned early on to be self-sufficient, to not burden her parents with her emotional needs, to become independent at a tender age. She had built walls around her emotional landscape, a fortress to protect her vulnerable inner child. As an adult, this early conditioning had manifested as a fierce independence, a reluctance to truly lean on others, and a deep-seated belief that her emotional needs were a burden. This was the genesis of her pain with no name, the unacknowledged longing for authentic connection, the buried grief of a childhood devoid of genuine emotional intimacy. The picture, a simple relic from her past, unlocked a torrent of forgotten feelings, a recognition of the emotional neglect that had shaped her unconscious landscape. It was a moment of profound revelation, a crack in the carefully constructed facade she had presented to the world. She saw with heartbreaking clarity how her current detached existence was a direct echo of that solitary child in the vast, empty field. The not-enoughness wasn't a flaw in her, but a yearning for something she had never fully received, a missing piece of her emotional puzzle. This wasn't about blaming her parents, but understanding the roots of her own coping mechanisms and the pain they had unwittingly perpetuated. Alara's journey into the hidden self revealed the shadow archetype at play, the unconscious aspects of her personality that she had disowned or repressed. Her relentless pursuit of external validation, her aversion to vulnerability, and her seemingly inexplicable sadness were all manifestations of this unintegrated shadow. The unacknowledged needs of her inner child, the emotional hunger she had suppressed, had become a powerful, unseen force, creating the very emptiness she yearned to fill. This archetype, as Jung posited, represents the dark, unknown side of the personality, comprising all that has been denied or deemed unacceptable by the conscious ego. For Alara, this included her deep-seated desire for emotional nurturing and her innate capacity for vulnerability, which she had equated with weakness. Her pain, once nameless, now had a narrative, a historical trajectory rooted in early attachment experiences. The path to healing, then, for someone like Alara, lies in the courageous act of shadow work. It involves confronting those disowned parts of oneself, acknowledging their existence, and integrating them into the conscious personality. This is not about succumbing to the shadow, but about understanding its origins and reclaiming its latent energy. For you, the viewer, who may resonate with Alara's experience, the invitation is to look inward, to explore the subtle nuances of your own emotional landscape. What are the whispers you ignore? What are the feelings you've deemed inconvenient or unacceptable? Begin by observing moments of unexplained sadness or anxiety. These are often clues, breadcrumbs leading you back to the unacknowledged aspects of your inner world. Journaling, creative expression, and even seeking the guidance of a therapist can provide invaluable tools for this introspective journey. Dare to sit with the discomfort, to lean into the pain, for within its nameless depths lies the potential for profound self-discovery and ultimate liberation. Embrace the quiet moments, allow yourself to feel, and know that your capacity for genuine connection and emotional wholeness awaits your courageous embrace. Remember, the journey into the hidden self is not a condemnation, but an invitation to wholeness, a profound act of self-love. It is in facing the shadows that we find our true light. The exploration of the nameless pain, that profound internal ache, often leads us to another crucial aspect of the hidden self, the unconscious mind and its vast, often bewildering influence. Have you ever found yourself reacting to a situation in a way that feels disproportionate, or repeating patterns of behavior you vowed to break, only to be drawn back into their familiar embrace? This is where the wisdom of Sigmund Freud resonates profoundly, illuminating the invisible strings that pull us, often without our conscious awareness. Freud, the pioneering architect of psychoanalysis, posited that much of our mental life, our motivations, our fears, and our very identities are shaped by forces operating beneath the surface of our consciousness. He famously stated, "The unconscious is the true psychic reality." This declaration is not merely an academic pronouncement. It is a profound insight into the human condition, suggesting that the pain we cannot name often originates in this unseen realm, a repository of our deepest desires, traumas, and unresolved conflicts. Consider the case of Marcus, a man plagued by an inexplicable anxiety whenever he contemplated forming a serious, committed relationship. He was charming, successful in his career as a freelance graphic designer, and genuinely desired a lasting partnership. Yet, each time he felt himself growing truly close to someone, an overwhelming sense of dread would wash over him, compelling him to create distance, to find a flaw, to eventually sabotage the budding connection. He had no conscious memory of any traumatic relationship experience, no readily identifiable reason for this persistent self-sabotage. His friends would offer advice, encouraging him to just commit, failing to grasp the invisible chains that bound him. Marcus often felt a deep sense of frustration with himself, a feeling of being fundamentally broken, because he couldn't pinpoint the source of this profound discomfort. It was a pain without a clear narrative, a phantom limb ache in his emotional life. This pattern, this repetition of withdrawal, was a classic manifestation of the unconscious at work, a testament to Freud's assertion that our unacknowledged past continues to dictate our present. One day, during a casual conversation with his older sister, the topic turned to their childhood. She recounted a period when their parents, facing severe financial difficulties, had been on the brink of divorce. Marcus, only 5 years old at the time, had no conscious recollection of this tumultuous period. His sister described their mother's emotional withdrawal, her constant worry, and their father's frequent absences as he desperately sought to stabilize their situation. She vividly recalled one evening when, after a particularly heated argument, their mother had tearfully told young Marcus, "It would be easier if I were alone. You just make things more complicated." While the mother had likely uttered these words in a moment of extreme distress, not intending to scar her child, for the sensitive 5-year-old Marcus, this statement had been a seismic event. His nascent understanding of love and attachment had been fundamentally shaken. He had unconsciously equated deep emotional connection with instability, with the potential for abandonment and causing pain. He had internalized a core belief that his very presence, his need for love, was a burden that could lead to the dissolution of relationships. This repressed memory, unearthed decades later, was the key to unlocking Marcus's inexplicable anxiety. His adult fear of commitment wasn't a conscious decision. It was a deeply ingrained defense mechanism, a pattern of emotional self-preservation established in childhood. The pain with no name was the trauma of that early emotional abandonment, the unconscious fear that if he allowed himself to fully love and be loved, he would once again become a burden, leading to the painful withdrawal of the other. His pattern of pushing people away was, ironically, an unconscious attempt to protect himself from the very pain he was inadvertently recreating. The seemingly irrational urge to flee intimacy was a survival strategy, meticulously crafted by his young, impressionable mind to avoid the perceived threat of abandonment. It was a profound revelation, a moment of clarity that brought into sharp focus the intricate connection between his past and his present struggles. The story of Marcus underscores the powerful concept of trauma psychology, highlighting how early experiences, even those seemingly forgotten, can leave indelible imprints on our psyche, shaping our emotional responses and behavioral patterns in adulthood. The emotional blueprint laid down in those formative years, particularly concerning attachment and security, often dictates our relational dances in later life. Marcus's journey towards healing necessitated a deeper engagement with the principles of ego projection. He had, without realizing it, been projecting his own unconscious fears of abandonment and inadequacy onto his romantic partners. Every perceived fault, every subtle sign of distance from them, was amplified by his own internal anxieties, acting as confirmation of his deeply held, unconscious belief that he was inherently burdensome. The key for Marcus, and for anyone grappling with similar patterns, lies in the challenging yet transformative process of bringing the unconscious into conscious awareness. This is not about blame, but about understanding. It's about recognizing that the other is often a screen upon which we project our own internal landscapes. To begin this work, you are invited to explore the recurring themes in your life. Do you find yourself consistently drawn to certain types of people or relationships that ultimately lead to the same predictable outcomes? Are there moments when your reactions feel out of sync with the actual situation? These are often breadcrumbs from your unconscious, hinting at unaddressed wounds or unfulfilled needs. Engaging in practices that foster self-reflection, such as journaling, dream analysis, as Jung would advocate, or even simply dedicating time to quiet introspection, can help to gently coax these hidden aspects into the light. Seek to understand, rather than judge, the origins of your deepest fears and anxieties. When you encounter moments of intense emotional reactivity, pause and ask yourself, what is the underlying fear here? Is this truly about the present moment, or is it an echo of something from my past? The courage to sit with these uncomfortable questions, to lean into the vulnerability of self-discovery, is the first step towards reclaiming your power. Remember that your past does not have to dictate your future. By illuminating the shadows of your unconscious, you gain the agency to rewrite your narrative and cultivate relationships built on genuine connection, rather than unspoken fear. The power to transform resides within you, awaiting your conscious recognition and compassionate embrace. Having traversed the labyrinthine corridors of the unconscious and confronted the subtle whispers of the nameless pain, we arrive at the threshold of profound personal transformation. This final stage delves into the very essence of individuation, a cornerstone of Carl Jung's philosophy, which speaks to the lifelong process of becoming a whole and integrated self. But how does one move from the recognition of pain to the active construction of a healed and authentic existence? The journey often begins with a fundamental shift in perspective, a reevaluation of our intrinsic worth, and the courageous act of shedding the masks we have worn. It is here that the empowering insights of feminism intertwine seamlessly with psychological healing, asserting that true liberation comes from within, from reclaiming our inherent power and defining our own narratives, independent of societal expectations or past wounds. Consider the story of Lena, a woman who had spent most of her adult life seeking external validation. Her self-worth was meticulously tethered to the opinions of others, her romantic partners, her colleagues, even fleeting acquaintances. She was a chameleon, effortlessly adapting her personality to fit whatever environment she found herself in, a master of agreeable compliance. This constant external focus, however, left her perpetually exhausted and deeply unfulfilled. She experienced moments of joy, certainly, but they were always fleeting, overshadowed by a pervasive sense of inadequacy that no amount of praise or affection seemed to truly alleviate. This was her pain with no name in its most insidious form, the dissolution of her authentic self, sacrificed on the altar of external approval. She intuitively understood that she was missing something vital, a core of self-acceptance that seemed to elude her. The hollow ache she felt was the suppressed longing of her anima, her inner feminine spirit, yearning to be recognized, expressed, and celebrated in its purest form, unburdened by the need for external mirroring. Lena's turning point arrived after a particularly devastating breakup, not because of the loss of the partner, but because she realized, with chilling clarity, that she no longer knew who she was without him. His departure had stripped away the identity she had so carefully constructed around being his girlfriend, leaving her adrift in a sea of self-doubt. In the aftermath, she found herself drawn to books on psychology and self-empowerment, particularly those discussing the concept of self-worth. One evening, she stumbled upon a quote by Carl Rogers, the father of humanistic psychology. "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." This statement, so simple yet so profound, resonated deeply within her. It was a radical idea for someone who had always believed change had to precede acceptance. Could it be that the key to her elusive self-worth wasn't about striving to be better for others, but about embracing her current, imperfect self? This insight sparked a transformative period for Lena. She began by engaging in practices that fostered self-awareness, not in a critical way, but with gentle curiosity. She started journaling, not to recount daily events, but to explore her deepest thoughts and feelings without judgment. She consciously began to challenge the automatic impulse to seek external approval. Instead of asking, "What do they think of me?" she started asking, "What do I think of this? What do I feel?" This was the laborious, often uncomfortable, but ultimately liberating work of individuation. She started small, choosing her own clothes based on her genuine preference, rather than what she thought would be most appealing to others. Expressing an honest opinion in a group discussion, even if it differed from the prevailing view. And, most crucially, learning to say no without guilt. Each small act of authentic expression was a brick laid in the foundation of her newfound self-worth. Lena also recognized the powerful influence of her internal dialogues. She had an inner critic, honed over years of people-pleasing, that would constantly berate her, whispering doubts and fears. Inspired by the principles of Stoicism, particularly the teachings of Marcus Aurelius on controlling one's inner narrative, she began to observe these thoughts rather than identify with them. She learned to pause, to acknowledge the thought, and then to consciously choose a different, more compassionate response. This was not about eradicating negative thoughts entirely, but about preventing them from dictating her emotional state and behavior. She started meditating, not to empty her mind, but to create a space of stillness where she could observe her thoughts and emotions without becoming entangled in them. This practice of internal discernment allowed her to differentiate between the voice of her authentic self and the echoes of external conditioning. She learned that true power resided not in controlling the world around her, but in mastering her internal world. This active process of self-creation, of choosing awareness over automatic reaction, was the antidote to her nameless pain. The journey of individuation, as exemplified by Lena, culminates in a profound sense of inner liberation. It is the realization that your self-worth is not an external commodity to be earned or granted, but an inherent quality of your being. For you, the viewer, who may feel trapped in the cycle of seeking external validation, the empowering message is this: your authentic self is not hidden away, but simply awaiting your compassionate attention. Begin by cultivating a relationship with your inner voice, the quiet knowing that resides within you, often overshadowed by the clamor of external expectations. What truly brings you joy, independent of what others might think? What values do you hold most dear, even if they diverge from the mainstream? Embrace practices that foster mindfulness and self-compassion. This could be as simple as taking a mindful walk in nature, engaging in creative expression that nurtures your soul, or practicing gentle yoga that connects you to your body. Allow yourself to feel the full spectrum of your emotions without judgment, recognizing that even discomfort serves as a guidepost on your journey. The pain you carried, once nameless, transforms into a catalyst for growth, a beacon guiding you towards a richer, more integrated existence. It is in this courageous act of self-reclamation that you tap into an inexhaustible wellspring of inner power, discovering that the true validation you seek has always resided within you. Your journey is not about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you truly are. It is a profound act of self-love, a rebellion against external definitions, and a joyous embrace of your unique and magnificent self. This is not the end of your journey, but merely the exciting beginning of a lifelong dance with your authentic self. The quiet strength you cultivate, the internal power you unleash, will ripple outwards, transforming your relationships and your experience of the world. Embrace the stillness, for within it, you will find your truth. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and share this video with others who might benefit from these valuable insights. Thank you for listening. The end.